Thank you so much for joining us this week. We're going to be playing with data, but first, hit that subscribe button. I'm joined this week by the fabulous Lyzi Diamond, a colleague of mine at Glitch and a fellow developer advocate. Hello.
Hello.
I am super stoked to have Lyzi with me this week because this week we are playing with the Stack Overflow 2019 Developer Survey results. I don't know if you've ever seen this go by in the past, but every year Stack Overflow surveys a whole mess of developers from all over the world, gets their opinions on things, collects demographic information about them, and just tries to see who are people who are building software and who they are, what they like, how happy they are with the state of the world, and they publish that stuff. And this year, we have actually teamed up at Glitch with Stack Overflow, and they're to build apps for exploring that data and visualizing it. So this week we're going to play with some of those, that data, and we're going to remix the Stack Overflow app. And I'm going to, while I'm remixing this, Lyzi, do you want to sort of talk about your why you immediately leapt at the opportunity to be part of this stream this week?
Totally. Well, there's a few reasons. One being that data is fun and playing with data is fun and charts are cool, but also because this data in particular is really important for us and our jobs, to help people make stuff on the internet and do it well, and feel like they're being supported and feel like they are getting what they need. So by exploring this data in new, fun, different ways, we can make tech, better and less of a dumpster fire.
Less of a dumpster fire, I think, is something to really aim for. It's a low bar, but I feel like we're not even there yet. So
yeah, no, sadly.
This is sort of the front end app for the 2019 Stack Overflow survey data. It's meant to be something that's highly remixable, and so we're going to jump into it. I just wanted to really quickly pull up the README, and we'll talk about this a little bit. But there's sort of the sample app tries to answer really simple questions, which is what does one demographic group feel about a topic? And the data actually lives in a separate application, which I also have around here somewhere. Here we go. And that is a dataset app. Dataset, I'm not super familiar with it, but it is an extremely rad tool that lets you take kind of a big CSV file or data dump and turn it into a SQL queryable API. It's a Python app. It's super cool. And Angelo at Glitch was kind enough to stand up an instance of Dataset with the public anonymized data dump from the Stack Overflow survey. So we have this API server which we can query and get data back and then do cool things with it. And that's what we're going to do.
So for those following along at home who can't see because they're blind like me and need to squint, that's a data set with an ETTE.
I should also bump all my font sizes up. Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's a bit more readable. But we're actually going to jump right into this project. We're going to hit view source, and we'll see what's in here. But you can see we've got our README here. We've got the side-by-side view. Gosh, this side-by-side view is cool. But so you can see we have all these different demographic drop-downs. So we can say, what do women with dependents feel about their current job? And we can click this. It's going to think for a second and go query the data. And then we're going to get a chart. Obviously, this is pretty high level. I want to see if we can learn some interesting stuff. But I think this is a really cool starting point. Procrastinator in the chat said, sometimes I feel frustrated by just seeing numbers. Hopefully we'll find some interesting facts. That's the hope, is to see I want to slice and dice this data a couple different ways, and maybe folks in chat can try to call out things that they're curious about, and we can see what's available to us. Stack Overflow recently started collecting much more detailed demographic data. People are allowed to self-identify on a number of different axes, and I think that's going to be really valuable because, I'm super curious, when it was just the mass of developers who responded to the survey, it was very skewed, and it was really hard to know how it was skewed. It was obviously skewed toward the users of Stack Overflow, who are predominantly white, straight, cis men. And I think being able to actually compare and contrast things about how people feel about their career and their education backgrounds and things like that is going to make this data that much more valuable than just like people with bachelor's degrees like their jobs, which is like, I'm glad that people with bachelor's degrees like their jobs, but I feel like that doesn't really reveal enough about the individuals who make up our community. So I'm going to jump a little bit into the code here, but
should we remix first?
oh, that's a very good idea. I was going to even just do a walkthrough, but before I start typing, gosh, I don't want to accidentally edit the production app. Good call. Let's smash that remix button. And we are going to be in the project Educated Spark. So I'm going to very quickly update the stream description and drop a link in chat. For folks who want to play along at home, the link in chat will actually let you see the project that I'm working on and sort of click around and actually look at the code yourselves in your browser and see the edits live. And Lyzi, I'm going to invite you when you are able to hop into the project so you can actually make edits as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Are there any things in particular you're curious about?
I know that there is data in data set ETTE. Oh wait, do you mean like inside of this app or like?
Well, just like what things in the data set that we have, the non-TTE data set powered by the TTE data set that we have, that you want to learn more about. I actually did a query where I just hit the schema and got a list of all the different kinds of questions and things that people have.
Yeah, so that's an important thing to mention, right? Is that like the UI, what's here in Educated Spark, is only a few select options that were put into the drop-down menu. It doesn't necessarily reflect the whole data set and all of the options that are in that data set. So I'm curious to see what all of, I mean, like without, I'm curious to see about folks who answered other and like their own things to any of these questions, like what their answers to the topics were, like, and also the full list of questions would be cool.
I think this is the full list of questions dumped here. I'm actually going to, I think a really cool way that we can start with our project is take this data, the actual data about the data, and read that in actually to our app so we have access to everything. So the cool part is you can actually phrase these things as a SQL, or as I like to pronounce it, squirrel query. MySQL, PostgreSQL, Microsoft Squirrel Server, and you can grab that as a JSON URL. So I'm gonna actually copy the link to this and take a look at Educated Spark. Educated Spark, like you said, this project right now very specifically answers a few questions. It may make sense for us to even go out of our way to like just get everything else. I'm gonna say let questions and do a fetch. I just
Ooh,
go ahead.
That's a great. Oh no, I was just gonna say. Recently, I got myself into trouble by making a front end app and moving it to the back end, and then making a back end app and moving it to the front end, and like getting files. So fun reminder for me, future me, and also future you, maybe when you watch this again, if you watch this again, is that fetch is super awesome for making asynchronous requests on the front end. However, if you try to use it in your backend app, it won't know what to do because it doesn't know what fetch is. Pro tip.
That is a very good, that's an extremely good tip. Yeah, there's a really wonderful library for Node called Node Fetch that I sometimes will use. There's actually a bunch of really cool request libraries available for Node. I like Node Fetch because it lets me effectively just use fetch everywhere and not worry about where I am. But it still will catch you up if you're trying to read files from your local file system. It will not.
Exactly.
It does not do that. Where on the front end, as you say, there's no difference between a remote URL and a file in your project. Mostly. 3GSY, I'm interested in discovering any changes between this previous year's survey results and this year's. That would be super cool to do comparing and contrasting. Just because I think the dataset app only has this year's results in it, I think we might not be able to do that. We can take a look to see what it would take to get last year's survey results. But I think we're mostly going to be slicing and dicing this year's. But that is a really good idea. This is just right now. Yes, this app has a bunch of logic below it. I'm just trying to get us access to all the good stuff. I'm gonna bump up.
Oh, another
fonts.
one heads up: when you do a console with Glitch, when you do a console log on the front end, the console it's referring to is the console of the running page as opposed to the logs in the app.
Yes, that is another good gotcha. Where I was pair coding with someone the other day, and I kept using the words logs and console, and without explaining what I meant, and it was very confusing. And I realized that it's myself knew what I meant when I said them, but I was meaning different things every time I said it. Right? There's a difference between the browser's JavaScript console and the logs of the running server. And there's also a difference between the logs of the running server and the console, which is a terminal into the environment that's running your Glitch project. So when you console.log on the server, it goes to the logs, not the console. And when you console.log in the client, it goes to the console, but the browser's console.
Right.
Yeah, we aren't overusing words at all. No, it's fine.
Yeah, no,
it's fine.
I mean, the number one thing that I know about tech is that every word has a very specific meaning that is not used in any other.
Complete precision. Cool. So we have this response from the JSON request that we made. I'm gonna potentially even bump up the font size in my DevTools a bit more. I'm happen to be using the Firefox DevTools. I wanted to really quickly point out a neat thing. You can click this button over here. It looks like a frame set, and what it lets you do is actually pick which part. Because right now I have my front end, I have the project preview open in a frame, off in a sidebar, and so you can actually see that I'm able to pick different contexts for what the console should be pointing at. And so right now it's pointing at educatedspark.glitch.me, which means this frame right here. So as opposed to if I left it alone, it would have been the logs from the editor, which I don't care about at this point in time. That's just like a neat DevTools trick where I can sort of point this in different directions. So you can see that we now have this query and rows. I'm going to say rows is probably my results, and looks like it sure is. And it's giving me all of the codes for each question, right? Respondent, and then a pretty description of what that is. So we can actually potentially drill down on this by the pretty text of the question.
List called off on, and the question is, have you tried turning it off and on again?
Is that really what it says? That's incredible. Oh, I love that. That's so good. Okay. So, do we have a question for Idiotus? It's the other one. No, the other one. The other one. So we have sort of the existing drop-downs. They're using a pretty drop-down library, which is why they're searchable, and that's really nice. We may keep doing that sort of thing. I like the idea of creating a drop-down that just has every question in it because I'm mad with power.
Love it.
How do you feel about that, Lyzi?
I think that's great.
So what we can do is, so right now a lot of these are hard-coded, and what I would like to do is potentially create a software generated one. I'm gonna bring this console log down a little bit.
So
Get myself
when
centered.
you say
Please go ahead.
that, when you say you want to make a generated one, you're talking about the in the index.html, the select.
Yes, there's all these select boxes. And they're all hard coded. When by that I mean someone has gone to the effort of typing them in directly into the HTML file. I want to use JavaScript to make one of my own, and potentially kind of down here by topic, create a as opposed to you can see that actually topic itself is all the questions. I don't know if you can see that. It's coded for questions. But imagine if instead of just this list of 5, we had every question, and we could take a look at how people feel about every question. So I think that's going to be. Oh, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No. That's what you should do. Or I'll never stop.
This note that at the end of this list, it also has questions that are answered or that we like have been included in the other drop downs. So like age, gender, sexuality, dependence, etc. They're also in this list of questions.
Yeah, and so we might get ourselves into some redundant plots here where we say, I think we'll probably change. These are all phrased as these are all feeling questions, but what do people say their gender is? I guess is a valid query, but what do people who identify as men say that their gender is going to be a very obvious question. But we can, if we could do something smart there, but we can also just punt on that and just
yeah, totally. Just wanted to give a heads up.
No, that's a very good. That's a good one. Questions drop down. Ooh, that's constantly refreshing the sidebar. I'm going to close the sidebar. I think that's not good for anyone. And we'll switch over to a live view when we want to in a moment. So I'm going to be doing this. I don't think there's a framework on the page. I'm just going to do this the vanilla way. That's something that I'm very broken and enjoy doing, but normally we wouldn't have to do that.
Ooh, Cassie asks, does the turn off auto refresh button work on the sidebar? Does it?
Ooh, I actually don't know. Voyage of discovery time.
Wait, cool. Where is it?
Oh, sorry. I went very fast. I clicked on project options, and in the editor settings, there's a checkbox for refresh app on settings. I also just realized my stream is a little bit hiccuped at the moment. Gotta just wait to see.
I also just wasn't looking, so.
Yeah, I think we're having a stream hiccup at the moment, so I might or maybe it's just my browser is having a hard time, and everyone else is like, no, we're having no problems. That would be just as likely. Oh yeah, no one else is having a problem, just me. Okay, so I was able to uncheck this box for refresh app on changes. And now that is unchecked, as I type, I can say, hey, not refreshing. Yay, thank you, Cassie. Good catch. So I know this questions object has a rows property because I was exploring it just a moment ago. And I can say row, and for each row, we have at least 2 responses, and they were question code, question text. I'm using the destructuring operator here because I'm fancy.
So is that instead of writing? Oh, I see what you're doing. So you're making. I don't know how to describe it, but I get it.
Yeah. So I know that each row is an array with 2 items in it. And so I'm in one line of code saying the first element of that row is going to be unpacked as a variable called question code, and the second element of that code is going to be second element of that row is going to be a variable called question text. I am apparently having a little bit of stream hiccup stuff. I might need to just make sure that nothing is downloading updates on me. Give me 1 second.
Stuff that you know, always up in there trying to update things. Have you
I
ever
know.
like tried to
Yep.
go in for like a video chat and then your computer decides that's the exact moment it's going to restart and install
Yes.
40 minutes of upload?
Okay, so we have two variables called question code and question text, and for each of those we can create a option, which is going to be and then the option will have a pretty text, which is the question text, and the option will have, feels a little laggy, Cassie says. I can see that. And the second thing, you can hear me, but the video freezes. Okay, that's good to know. Question code. And then we can say question drop down dot append option. And then I created a spot in the, I went over to HTML earlier and made a div with a class of questions that I'm going to use as a target to insert this into. There's a couple other ways we could do that. Sometimes it's just nice to be like, this container. This container is going to be appended. Sorry, document.query selector. Misspelled that. We'll come back. And we'll
Query selector.
so it's getting a little bit SpongeBob. Query selector. Query selector. Okay, so assuming that this little bit of code that I just wrote isn't complete gobbledy, if I refresh, we should have a new thing. And we do, look. We now have this extremely unwieldy drop down. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, it's so good.
These are definitely good questions. No, they're a little unwieldy. However, I think we can actually wrap these things in a thing called Slim Select. So we can say,
Ooh, before you do that,
yeah.
can we also add, I noticed that the other drop downs have a nice little blank space before you select anything. Can we add that to ours too?
Oh, yes, most definitely. What does that look like?
It's just a dash dash
Just
for
like
the question
oh yeah,
code.
it's just this blank,
Or,
just one of
yeah.
these. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I see that in index.html. The other ones have like kind of an unselected thing, so we can absolutely do that. And
Cool.
we shall. Oop, that's not what I want. But so we can say question. We can say let blank row equals let or blank. I should say option. That's going to be another. That's going to be another one of these. And in fact, I'm just going to copy paste this little bit of code here. And so this is our blank option. And let me put some spacing in here so we can see that I'm doing a group of things. Right? We've got the following things. I know I have an error, but I want to just make sure I'm blank option. So option becomes blank option, inner text becomes dash dash, and value becomes nothing, I believe is what it was. Okay. One other thing I want to do, and that's I want to give this an ID because I don't know if you can see that it looks like Slim Select initializes itself based on the ID of the element, and let's just go along with that. Okay, assuming I spelled everything correctly. Always a big if. Aha! So now you can see we have a pretty looking. Oh, and see, look. This one wraps the Lyzi. So if you are able to refresh the app and see, this one will line wrap the questions. It looks way nicer. Oh, it looks so much nicer.
Yeah. This is great.
Yes, this gives me a happy. And then I believe did we have the blank at the top, or did that not get added? No, it didn't get added because I never added it. If I refresh the app, if you can see, but if you refresh the app now, there's now this.
Yeah.
And so we now have this big drop down, and now we can actually go into the code for this app and swap out their question prompt for our question prompt. At least that's my goal. Phrase component, and then we're going to call that what. It's really.
So the whole app is phrased. The whole app is meant to be phrased like a question. So, like, what do person block things
because
blank?
Yeah, and because we're using every single question, not all of them are phrased. Not all of them are. I'm going to be a little bit goofy and just say, how did people respond to
yes.
the question? This is still a sentence, right? And then we can take the topic select, and actually, potentially, we're going to comment out the topic select because we have our own topic select, and maybe we can just calmly comment that one out. Now, let's see what happens. Let's go find the code to see where they're creating all of that stuff. It's around here somewhere. Population data, sample size, topic selection dot selected. So I can say,
where are you?
I'm sorry. I am now down at line 94 at get chart data.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And so that seems to be, you can see there's a topic selection thing here. And I believe I can say questions drop down dot selected, which is telling me that variable is not defined. And that is true because I defined it, you can see, inside of this fetch.
It's scoped.
It is scoped in a way that is not useful. So we're just I'm gonna just define it. Sometimes you just make a global variable because you're trying to move on.
Yeah. All of these patterns, by the way, are patterns that I employ every single day of like, oh, I'm going to console log this data to see what it looks like. Oh, I'll just make that a global variable for now.
Yeah, these are pretty standard. Tricks, hacks. We'll call them hacks to get this stuff working. Okay. I'm getting an error now that says it can't find that select element. It's coming from script.js line 52, according to the console. And that's because, I commented out a thing on the page. And now it's sad. That's very reasonable. I'm going to look for other references to topic selection to make sure there aren't other variable references on this page that would. Nope, that seems to be all of them. Cool. So now if I refresh the page, no error. Okay, do you want to see if this works? Let's see if this works. We now can ask, how did straight heterosexual women respond to the question? And now we can say, you said there was a question, how did you try turning it off and back on again? I want to see if we can just see how they responded to that question. Ooh, this is creating some glitchy scrolling. I don't know if you can see that. Let's explore the data.
The three possible responses are no, what, and yes.
And you can and see we're comparing the results between so you can see there's only 4,112 people, about 4,000 people out of 86,000 people who matched our demographic data, and we can see in the chart below how they responded versus the total population. So I don't think this is meaningful, but straight women were slightly more likely to have tried turning it off and on again. Something tells me that does not meet the merits of statistical significance.
So can we add an option to these demographic drop downs for all?
When you say all, what do you mean?
I mean, so like instead of picking straight heterosexual or gay or lesbian or bisexual, what if I could pick well, I mean, the more advanced version is what if I can pick multiples, but also is there an option for like it doesn't matter about this, or is that just the don't pick the thing?
The dash dash is don't filter by this at all.
Okay, cool.
So right now this please.
Yeah, no. Then the second question is, can we do it like, so for example, I would love to know how many, gosh, what's an example? Women and non-binary or gender non-conforming people feel a certain way versus all respondents, as opposed to just selecting one of each of from that drop down.
Okay. So yeah, there's a couple of different ways we could do that. We could say, make this a multi-select, or we can also give ourselves the option of saying not and excluding a group.
Ooh.
So we could say all non-men, for example.
Right. Another potential direction, I'm just seeding this for the rest of this stream.
Yeah,
another potential direction to go would be to say, if they responded to this question this way, how did they respond to this other question? Because like, you know, so instead of just the demographic information as a qualifier, like what, like, did you go to, there's a question here about your like programming education, right?
Oh, yes.
So like for people who went through a CS program versus who didn't, how did they respond to this question?
Yeah, yesterday I was pairing with someone and we actually did that exact thing where we did aggregate things. And we explicitly just did people with formal CS or web development training versus people without. And like we created a very explicit like split and grouped the stuff together. But something tells me we could build something more sophisticated there. Ooh, I can see where Chart.js is starting to like strain at the limits of the data. I wonder if it's because the window's narrow. I'm gonna pop this into a new window and see what that looks like. Education. Let's just try this. I'm gonna make sure my font sizes are big. Yeah, that looks better. So, yeah, which of the following types of non-degree education is a thing that was available? It's still overflows a little bit, but yeah, I think that's a really good idea. That we'll definitely have to do a bit more restructuring.
Right, because like in the reason that this app had responses hard coded was so that they could do things like rephrase the question and refer to an answer as opposed to like just the question. Right. So like each of these drop downs has like a set of potential answers that were hard coded.
Yes. The procrastinator in the chat says complex selectors are complex to implement meaningfully and graphically. I agree. But I think it might be interesting to figure out maybe just one more complex layer on top of what we're already doing. We could do multi-select. I think because all of these things are one, the demographic information, right? The demographic information and the demographic information and the questions are the same thing. They're all questions. So really, we could have another questions drop down up here. That's how did people respond to the question this way? A question this way, respond to a different question this way, and just do pure XY comparison.
Yeah, I think that sounds cool.
Yeah, I actually think that would be pretty interesting.
So you're saying like to take the demographic information out?
So we'll replace the demographic information with potentially just a kind of never-ending list where you're like, how did someone who said their gender is, and someone who said their gender, and someone who said their education is, and at the end view that grouping of people with a so you essentially repeatedly answer the same repeatedly go through the same fields over and over and over, and then it's gonna be a little messy, but I think that's actually a really worthwhile thing to do because it will let us kind of infinitely slice and dice the data.
Yeah, one fun thing about these streams too is that we can be like, yeah, if you were trying to make the most coolest, most efficient thing that was designed the most optimal way, you might not do this, what we're about to do. But we're doing it now, doing it live.
Doing it live. And we've got happened to have a couple small queries sitting off to the side that on the off chance we'd be doing something similar to this that I can pull in. I may have done a tiny bit of clever pre-prep.
That's okay. I'll allow it.
You'll allow it? Thank you. Oh.
Stream police over here.
So first things first. First things first, I need to actually store this. I want to store this stuff a little differently. Just so it looks like that. That's mostly because I'm going to be doing lots and lots of queries, right? And so I want to just... it looks like, for looking at the URL of the query is just like a thing, and then... right, you can see it's just like a thing. Oh, that's got this extra hash on it. I wonder if the hash matters. I doubt it.
I'm sorry, you have to tell me where you are again.
Oh, sorry, I'm in line 14 of the project in script.js. I'm looking at that URL that I hit, and you can see it has this extra like hash on the end of it. I don't know if that matters. The thing that's interesting to me is that this is literally just a squirrel query, right? This is just... I'm wondering if we can effectively... I want to see if I can write a function. Query data, which just takes a query, and then return fetch base URL JSON plus, it looks like I could say SQL equals, and then I'm going to use the awesome helper function called encode URI component, which will take the query in nice human text and turn it into something that can be stuffed into our URL.
Do we know what data set we'll do if we give it a malformed query?
I'm going to... yes, I happen to know that from yesterday, some little bit of exploration, it's going to give me a 400.
Okay.
So it's going to... I probably do want to make sure that when I do something like this fetch, that at the end I'm catching any errors and logging them so I know what they are. That's always good to know. In case you're wondering, like, why isn't this working? We'll be able to see that. So this fetch, which was column, comma, question text from schema, this can actually be rewritten, hopefully, as query data. Doesn't that look nice? That looks way nicer. So now it's going to be just like a nicely formed squirrel query, and then let's see if that still works.
Ooh, it says failed to fetch for me.
Does it? Can you try refreshing one more time?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Never mind.
Did that work that time?
Yeah.
It's weird. The cool part about oh, please go ahead.
Did it work for you, or you?
When I went to Educated, Spark glitched on me and refreshed. It worked. Let me refresh again.
Oh, okay. Let me try, because what I'm getting is a 400 from the data set.
Interesting.
You're not?
No.
Let's see.
Very weird.
Oh, what?
What's going on?
Oh, I just realized that my console was pointing at the editor, but I was still, like, when we were doing console logs, it was still printing to here, the console for the editor.
that can happen. I think things that are framed will bubble up console.logs. It just puts a lot of noise in.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
Is it still not working for you?
No, it is. It is.
It is. Okay. Neato. We're going to temporarily just take all of the stuff that's currently in the index, all those selects. And actually, I'm just going to delete them because we have rewind if we need rewind. And we have the project we remixed this from. So as opposed to worrying too much about it, we're going to create a whole new world here.
A new fantastic point of view.
Mm-hmm. No one's going to tell us no or say we're only dreaming.
That data doesn't exist. You just imagined it in your subconscious. Pay no attention to the data behind the data set.
The data behind the data set. So we now have this. Ooh, hang on a sec. Something is afoot with my headset. So now we have this filters object, which by default contains nothing, but we want it to. So we're going to make it do that. And so the filters is going to be, oh my goodness.
Oh, my friend Tim is in the chat.
My earbuds are very sad. Yeah, I'm very sorry. Let me see if I can get this back online. Oh yeah, someone in channel says hello to Lyzi.
What's up, cat dad?
And I'm going to create a bunch of filters, and each filter is going to consist of two things. Each filter is going to consist of a question and a specific answer. We're going to start with one specific answer.
Perfect.
And we are going to also start, I think, by anding these together, which means it's going to be people who said they said one thing and they also said this other thing. So we're going to stack up filters, and we'll be able to look at very somewhat specific answers. We're going to have a set of question and answer pairs in our filters, and we're going to use those to filter the data. Surprising. Okay. Right now we have queried, we select the column and we create the question text from the schema, and then we make one of these options drop downs. We're actually going to need to make a lot of these, right? Because we're going to need to make one for each filter object. So I'm going to write a function that returns one of these. So we're going to write a function that says make question drop down. And actually, it's not only going to make question drop down, it's probably going to make the answer drop down as well, but we'll start with the question drop down. And so we make a question drop down, and because we've already fetched everything once. Is that accurate? Yeah, we've already fetched everything once. We don't have to refetch it because I've stored it in questions. So we also create a variable to store. Let filters. We're probably going to need and a list of all of our filters. So make question dropdown, and we're going to repeat a bunch of the stuff that we just did up here, like so. And we can rename it and store it locally. So it's not called question dropdown. It's just going to be called down. I don't know. Maybe we could have called it question dropdown. Whatever. And then I believe we can, when we make it, we will return as a variable. We don't need to say question. Oh, questions.forEach. That checks out. I think all of that looks good. We don't want to append it because we don't know where we're going to put it. And then we need to say return drop down. I'm curious if I'm going to take a look at the slim select library very quickly on the internet. We're going to go for a quick zhuzh. And we're going to see if we can find. Apparently it's is this the same thing? Yeah, same library. Fantastic. No dependencies. What a boon. I'm going to go to their docs and see if I can just pass in the reference as opposed to giving it a selector. I'm going to assume I can, but
we could try it.
That's true. We could just try it. I see their docs are not really docs. Is there documentation on this site?
Pro tip.
It's this drop down. Oh no, it's this drop down. That's clever. That makes a lot of sense. That their menu wouldn't be a drop down. Oh, here we go. Select. You can specifically pass an element, and you pass it to the select property. That's Lyzi's profile. That's my profile, and that's my tab. So I can just say drop down. Okay, and that's going to spit out. So each time we call this function, we'll get a whole new drop down with every single question in it. I think that is somewhat reasonable.
Yeah.
As I'm doing, this is always the when you're trying to charge your earbuds, and so you're swapping them back and forth as you like level them up. Dignity. Okay. So we now want to make a function that says make filter row. We're going to make, so filter row is going to be a div, and it's going to contain two things, a question and an answer. So we're going to start by saying l.append. By the way, append is one of the DOM function I only recently learned about. I've always used append child versus append, and the cool thing about append is it doesn't care whether it's an element or a string, and so you can just like make a big list of like strings and elements and then feed them all into append. It'll even like take a list of stuff. It's very, very cool. So I can say l.append. No, actually, we're going to keep track of this. Let question equals make question drop down. And then we can say l.append question. And then we want to make an answer drop down. So we're going to say, and you'll see, I'm going to write this a little bit. Ooh, actually, let's be real fancy. Let's make this an asynchronous function. And I'll show you why. The answer equals
oh, I see. Can I guess?
Yeah, please.
So my guess is that we have pulled in all of the questions already, but we have not pulled in all of the potential answers. And so we need to go and get the answers, but we don't want to get all the answers for every question and store them locally. So when we go and get the answers, we're actually going to grab them asynchronously, thus the asynchronous function. Am I wrong?
Nailed it.
Yes.
So
Sorry,
good.
I may have hacked it.
Though I'm realizing that actually I can't go fetch the answers until you know what you've selected. So actually, we're gonna go take a look at we're gonna go take a look at the ability to watch for a change. I'm gonna assume they have some sort of assume that still emits like events and stuff. Maybe not.
I would have to imagine that it emits at least the same events as like a vanilla select, right?
Oh gosh, I hope so. Let's find out, shall we? Question dot add event listener change. We're just gonna log if it's changed.
Cool.
So I haven't made any of these yet. I'm realizing. So we're gonna say we're just gonna right at the end when we fetched all our questions for the first time. We're gonna make a filter row, which is actually what we would likely do in this situation anyway. So this seems logical. Refresh.
Well, still have that error from make answer drop down because that's a function that doesn't exist. There we go.
And now it's a line of code that doesn't exist. So two things. Couldn't find the select element for what? Create demographic. Oh, right. There's still a ton of setup code that's happening that I've commented a bunch of it out. So we're just going to have to...
Can I just say, this is going great.
This is going great. I'm feeling pretty good about this.
Yeah, we're halfway through. We're making stuff. We're doing stuff. People are watching, maybe.
People are watching, maybe. That is the exact right. Okay, I'm going to log that question element because apparently I can't just add event listener to it. Gives me a little bit of feels. But it looks like it does have a thing called onChange. So let's see if that's a proper... See what that looks like.
Ooh.
Well, I don't have an error anymore.
I got the event in my console. And when I opened the drop down for E, the first thing that it said is, or the first property in there was addable. Like, can you add it? Addable. But I thought it said adorable.
the Dorbs.
I'm just gonna add that as a property to every object I ever make. Adorable.
I just realized we haven't added our filter row to the page either, so we're gonna do that. Object. Good job. That's interesting.
What are you seeing?
I created an element called a div. Do you notice how there's just an object on the page that says object?
Oh yeah. Oh yep. Mm-hmm.
And that's because I can't. I'm also logging. I'm logging what the object is. So give me a moment. I think I know maybe what's going on. Can I get a reference to? Can I get a reference to the original thing, or is the original thing gone? The original thing is gone. Okay, that's actually useful, which means that this needs to happen. L.append question, and then we say let drop down equals select question. Okay, so now, do I do the right thing?
Yeah.
Oh, and then question to on change becomes question drop down. So, refresh the page. Aha! And we have two things. And the first one, if I interact with it, it totally logs a thing.
Awesome.
I'm happy with that. Did it tell me what? Oh, and it told me what the tell me what the value is. It told me what the value is. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So this means that now on change we can do the following. We can say let answer, and we'll say on change let
We want to capture the value, right? Yeah.
Yep. And then answer equals make. Oh, wait. Boom. Okay. And we want to pass it a question code.
Yeah.
Oh, can I not? Because this is inside of it.
What does the linter say?
The linter was whining because this is inside of a function
Oh.
that wasn't asynchronous. It's fair. That's tough, but fair.
Well, because it's hard. Sometimes I forget when I'm using arrow functions like that it's a function.
Yeah, that's literally what just happened to me.
Yeah.
So then we can say in case you wonder whether I'm a console.log programmer. Oh, console.log programmer. Is that a question in this? Should be.
How often do you use testing versus console.log?
No, there's something about okay. So you can see we're logging misc tech worked with, which is fine. What this means that I can do is, and over here I have my over here I have my secret query, but that secret query is simply let. So what does this do? It says let. We'll call it
Do we want to fetch it?
We're going to fetch it, but we're going to use my helper function, query data. So we can say, and then instead of job sat, which is the previous, which is my sample query, it will be properly formatted. This is actually, it's always fun. It's always funky to do this. So it's going to actually request equals and then results equals. Fetch is a little funky to work with sometimes. We want to parse that as JSON. So we're going to take the.
Who's John?
Request.John. And then we'll parse the results.
Okay, so to be clear, as the page loads, the first thing that happens is the data, like all the questions are collected via the query data function.
Yep.
And then made into a dropdown.
Correct.
And then where do we call what do we call make question dropdown? Do we even call that yet?
We do. We call it from within make filter row.
Oh, right. Okay. But do we call make filter row?
We do. We call it at the end of the initial fetch to get the list of questions.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The control flow is not the clearest.
No, it's okay. That's why I'm saying it out loud so that I make sure I understand it. So create filter row or make filter row. That's why I couldn't find it because I was looking for the wrong thing. Make filter row. There was, I see it. Okay. And then inside of the filter row, we take the question that was selected and then pass that code, the value of the event, which is the code. We pass that to make answer drop down with the code, and then it makes answer drop down.
Which is now what we are doing.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Boom. You know what's up.
I mean, kind of.
And then we can ultimately, when we make our question drop down, or make our answer drop down, just clone, just totally clone this bit of code, because it's more or less the same. We could probably do something where we're not repeating ourselves and have some meta function that makes drop downs for us. I don't feel like it.
Seems a bit.
We're moving. Oh, and there's only actually what are my?
I don't know.
Is it,
we should read the console log first.
What are my rows? My rows, oh, they only have one field, and it's the actual code. But it's still packed as an array because software.
Mm-hmm.
So we can say answer text, and we'll say that both the value and the inner text are answer text.
Cool.
And then now, so actually, that's the whole function for make answer drop down. We replaced some variables. We left ourselves an option to have no response, and then we unpacked the data and created options for each of it, and then we return it. So down here, we can now say l.append answer, and then I believe we can say
up when you call query data, you're calling query data outside of the or when in the query data callback function, we are making a drop down. We don't need to make that drop down, right?
No, that's the initial drop. That's the bottom drop down right now. That's the so this is all the filters. We could make that into its own function as well. So that first drop down is of all the people who responded in all these particular ways, how did they respond to this final question? And that's the final question. Okay. So if we go to our interface, if you go to the app right now and it's not erroring, who knows? Yeah, it's mostly not erroring. You can see that there's this, I have it labeled filters and question.
Yeah.
And so that first drop down we make in after query data is the final question.
Okay. Oh, right. So the first one is if they answered it this way, how did they answer this one?
Bingo.
Okay. I forgot what we were doing.
All good. Yeah. I just made it so if you change the question and there's already an answer drop down, it will destroy itself and make another one. We'll see if that works. So I'm going to say, do you code as a hobby? And you'll see there's now an answer drop down for yes or no. If I change this to at what age? Oh, it didn't destroy the previous one, but the rest of it, but the other part worked. I'm going to guess that Slim Select has a function for destroy. It sure does.
Destroy.
So we can say if answer. Cool. And that will hopefully clean up after itself. I bet there's a way to update the content of something. We're moving fast and loose. We got places to be. So if I now change this question, it thinks for a second and a new answer pops up.
Nice.
That is satisfying. So now the next thing is if you have selected a question from the first list, do we make another filter row? And do we just let people add infinitely add filters?
Well, so would they be ands or ors?
We're gonna say ands for the time being. We could make them ors. Actually, while we're in here, I did notice something about Slim Select.
It would have to be.
Oh, go ahead.
Or. It would have to be or because you only answered each question.
But it would be
one answer, right?
Yes, but it would be. No, sorry. When I say and, it would be so people who say yes, they code as a hobby. The set of people who said that they both code as a hobby and they also said that they were men. And
so like adding. I thought that you meant adding another like. Just.
Oh, in that case, it would be or. You're definitely correct. And actually, it looks like Slim Select. I have my cat here who's deciding he wants dinner. In this case, it looks like multiple selects are a thing we can are totally supported by Slim Select. So I think we can kind of get a little bit of everything here, which I'm excited about. Nice. I think it just means that my answer drop downs make answer drop down. I just need to say drop down dot set attribute multiple. You know, I have two cats and you would never know it because only one of them runs around screaming while I'm streaming. Okay. So I think, look at that. I don't know if you can see this, but if you can now select multiple answers.
Whoa.
From the answer fields.
Oh my gosh. And it's so pretty.
And it's pretty. Thanks Slim Select.
You notice the little animation when you push the plus sign and it turns into an X?
Oh, that's the little things. When I click, it spins back, of course.
So great.
So I can now say no response, and probably need to make. Well, it's okay. We're cruising.
The arrows are spinny too.
So good.
Love it.
Let's see. Now we want to make it so we can add more than one filter. Mm-hmm. So, when on change happens, if question code equals eValue, we actually want to say if question code, because we don't, if it's the blank, we don't want to build an answer dropdown. But what we might want to do is, this is okay. So now we start to get into the
what?
Now we start to get into the fun stuff.
Oh, you mean because you don't want to have them be able to select one they've already selected? Is that what you're thinking?
I want them to be able to. So I think I made a function for filters, or I made a variable to collect filters. So what we can do is we'll say filters dot push, and we'll create an object that says question down answer drop down, and then I want to let filter ID equals filters.length, because we're going to add this immediately. And that means that we can keep track of all the filters we have on the page.
Okay.
Because what I want to do is say, if they've picked a question, do we need to make a new filter? And so we can say, if this is the last filter and they've put something in it, let's make another filter row. So we could say, if filter ID equals filters.length -1, which just means if are there more filters beneath us or not, and if there aren't, we can say make filter row. This is a little messy, but it's maybe not be how you do a multi-select thing, but let's see what happens. So if I select a question, decode as a hobby, hey look, it made another, there's no margins, which is kind of a pain. But if you've noticed, I can just keep adding questions now.
Wow.
I don't have a way to delete them, but you know, life's complicated. For now, this gets us to a point where I feel like we could now make the magic button at the bottom work.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Is like, can we? I would love to leave time to make sure that we is work.
I think we're there. So I want to do one more thing. I want to just go quickly into. Want to quickly say l.classlist.add filter, and then we can just put a margin between these filters. I think that would just look nice. Wouldn't you agree?
Mm-hmm. A slight margin would be cool.
Yeah, so let's just, there's all kinds of nice stuff in here. Filter, margin, 1em0. Sure, why not? So now, actually I can do that neat trick where you say filter plus filter, and that means every filter that follows a filter has a margin top of 1em. Or 1em is just a nice, neat value. So now, filters. Decode as a hobby. Hey look, another filter. How often do you contribute to open source? Hey look, another filter. Mm-hmm. So now, let's hit the Explore Data button and see what happens. That's right, it errors.
Yes, and it actually will show you that error too in the editor. If you go to line 230 in script.js, you can see it's like, I don't know what this thing is that you're trying to get me to select from.
That is extremely legitimate of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. They were working over a demographic list. We are not going to do that. Instead, we are going to work over a filter list. Same thing. But now we can say, looks like they're emitting these little ands, right? You can see like, and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, 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 etc. So I think what we can do is say filters.forEach.
Okay, let me make a confession. Please. Every single time I use any kind of iterator over an array or any kind of like filtering function over an array, so like a map or reduce, I have to look up every time what the parameters are every single time.
That's completely legitimate. For each and map are always the like easy ones for me most of the time, just because I'm only interacting with the object. So it's just, it takes a function and that function takes an argument. Arrow functions make this really clear, right? If you look at line 230 as I've written this, it's filters for each filter, and then there's a function that has a filter. Secretly beneath the hood, it's actually passing a filter and an index of where we are in the filters, and actually a reference back to the original filters again. I don't know why, but that's what it's doing underneath the hood. But I don't need it. Sometimes the index is very useful. Reduce gets messy. I have to look up reduce every time. But for this, I think we mostly can clone what's beneath here. So we're going to be able to say const I like to say let. I like lets instead of consts. It's weird. I think I'm a let person. It's fewer letters. I'll say const if it's a value I know will never change.
Fewer letters.
I know I'm the worst. I'll put it this way. I like to say that const is a value that I am not intending to change. Now, where it gets messy is with things like arrays. Technically, an array isn't changing when you're adding things to it, but yes, it is. So I just say let filters, which tells me when I look at the code, I'm going to be adding and removing stuff from this list. It's not a constant list. I'm using it more as convention than actually taking advantage of the actual rules. And that passes muster for me. And it just makes my code feel a bit more readable. So, okay, for each filter, we want to get the value. So value equals a question value. We can say filter dot question dot select dot slim select, or no, I think I just say selected. If there's no question selected for this filter, right? We can. I'm definitely just cribbing this from the line just below. So if there's no question, we don't continue because I'm not using a for loop. I'm using a for each. We return, which kicks us to the next pass to the loop. We don't need to do anything else. Let answers equals filter dot answer dot selected. And now for this part, I don't actually know what format they're going to come in, so we're going to log them. What's up?
So in the loop that was in here, the for loop, the for of,
yes,
is for of and for each the same, just with different syntax?
In a lot of ways, yes.
Okay.
I know that's not a very satisfying answer.
That's fine. It's it's not a huge deal. I was just curious because
so for there used to be a thing, there still is. There's a type of loop called for in, and for in would go over the keys of the array, and for of goes over the values of the array or the list.
Okay.
That's the only difference. So for of, if I had said for const filter of filters, we would be in a similar situation. The difference is we wouldn't be in a new function scope, right? We're still in that same function scope as above.
I see.
But,
okay.
So technically, a for of loop, you don't have some of the overhead that you have with for each. So but they're very similar. The cool thing about this is you could do some sort of neat unpacking trick. I could say I could do some other neat stuff. But yeah, for of and a for each are very, very similar. One has functions, one doesn't. One is just a block. But for of is sort of an evolution of for in, where you used to have to write for key in object, and then immediately the first line of the array would be, or the first line of the inner part of the loop would be let value equals object key, right? It would just the other nice thing about it is I think for of loops will automatically try to make objects into iterable things. So if demographics was an object, it would try to go over the keys of it. So it works on both arrays and objects. You can pass both arrays and objects to it, and it will get you the values out. Cool. So it's of tries to be clever, much more intelligent and helpful. I highly recommend you play for of loops sometime. They're pretty neat. Filter.answer was undefined was the error we're getting on our page. So I want to see, did I pass? Oh, yeah, look, I pass answer dropdown, but I've never put down, but answer dropdown isn't being assigned until I change it. So let's figure out, we're going to be cheap. And we're going to say filter object equals. This is very cheap.
Where are you?
Oh, sorry. I'm at line 1. I'm back in a make answer dropdown. Or sorry, a make filter row.
Oh, yeah, I see. Okay.
The problem is I was returning answer dropdown down here, but answer dropdown wasn't created yet because I had never changed it. So what we're doing is instead we're creating an object called filter object. And when we create answer dropdown, what we can actually do is say answer. We can actually say filter object dot answer equals answer dropdown. Okay, that's actually a valid line of code, but I think that's really confusing. So I'm going to split that into 2 lines. You could technically do both those things at the same time. I just think that's too clever to be useful. So in this case, now we will make sure that that object we've passed gets updated whenever we create a new answer dropdown. And we're assigning that to the property answer, which now means if we go back to the app, we can pick decode as a hobby. We can pick yes, we can hit explore the data and get our error, but you'll also see that we're now actually getting response. If I also pick no, which now means we're picking, now for the object results, we get both yes and no. This means that we're back. I feel like we're back in business.
Nice. Yeah.
We can go back all the way back down into get selected clause. The code that's in get selected clause is working with these like already URI encoded things. It's kind of hard to read, and I'm gonna use URI. I think we should use encode URI component at the end, as opposed to this is just a personal thing, but yeah. I'm going to construct the string and then URI encode it, as opposed to worrying about, as opposed to trying to figure out what ampersand or %22 %3d means. I'm just going to write normal stuff. Also, another thing we'll have to notice is that we're doing a this is an equals query. I know you can't tell, but %3d is an equals sign. And what that means is that they're looking for where a value is another value. Well, we have multiple values, so we can't use the equal sign. What we're going to end up doing is the in operator. And the in operator lets us say where the value is in this whole list of results. And so it'll be like where hobbyist in parentheses list of yes, comma, no. And that would technically that's every response in that case, but it lets us do sort of an where any of the responses are included thing. So what we're going to do is construct some in clauses. They're using these weird parameters, which I don't parameters I think are probably helpful from a like SQL query school of like being secure and good. I don't know how to use them, and when I was trying to use these with an in operator yesterday, it was not working. So we're just going to drop the parameters and do the ins directly, and that seemed to work. So we're going to say let clause string equals, and we're just going to do it looks like it's we'll use backticks, and we'll say and question in, and then we get to say answers dot join. It's actually answers dot map a. This is, I know I'm going fast here, but I'll once I type this, it's inside of my head. I will go back and explain what the heck I'm doing, and then explain why probably I should have written this as 2 lines. Because that is just a terrible line of code. Cool. So this clause string line, we're gonna split this up, where it's gonna be answer list, and that's gonna be this inner value here. Because what we're actually doing is the SQL query is expecting a comma separated list of answers where each one is wrapped in double quotes. And so what I went fast and clever there, and you can see I have answers, I'm mapping over them, and for each answer I'm returning a string, and that string is the answer wrapped in double quotes. And at the end I'm taking the whole list and joining it with a comma. And that produces a string of like quote yes, comma, quote no. And so this clause string is actually, that's the whole clause, I think. I'm just gonna do that because it looks nice.
Is that just convention?
What, capitals? I think in some dialects of SQL Squirrel, it is mandatory. The dialect we're using does not care at all. We know that all of our stuff is multi-select, so we can skip that. We're not using the parameters, so we don't have to increment index. We just need to push our stuff onto clause parts. So we just need to say clause parts.push clause string. We know we're not doing any of this demographic stuff. So we're just going to do that. We'll leave the parameter part stuff alone for the time being, but let's go see where we error, shall we? That was a bunch of changes. And we are right in the pocket time-wise. So let's explore the data. Network error.
Yeah.
Ooh. I don't know that I ever encoded my clause string. So that's definitely, I think, going to be mad at me for at least that reason. So
It's a fun set of errors too.
The set of errors that I got in my logs were,
Yeah,
like it's actually giving me a cross-origin request blocked.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
Which is really weird, given that I feel like this is the same thing we've been doing. Let me make sure I actually have values before I hit yes. Explore data. Weird.
What are you getting?
No, it's that same. It says CORS header access control allow origin is missing. But I don't feel like did I remove that code?
Well, so did the access, the URIs provided have different hashes.
I did see that.
So
I was hoping that just didn't matter. Saying bad request on our, I don't know if you can see that. My dev tools are. Did that still not encode the URI component properly? Did I decode it? Did I do something wrong? Clause string, clause parts.push. Gonna just at the end here.
Should we console log what you're pushing?
Yeah, I'm console.logging the final constructed object.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're in console.log a clock. Okay. So. Looks like it's not encoding the parentheses, but I don't think it has to. This is very strange.
So percent 22 is the double quotes, right?
That's the double quotes. And then you can see that encode URI component left the parentheses alone. I'm just going to assume that that's okay.
Well, how about we go over to the dataset app and try this query in there and see what is being requested?
I think that's a very good idea. I like that a lot. So there's a SQL list here. Also, there's a blank group by at the end. Maybe that's what's causing the splode.
Yeah, where is that getting added?
That's getting added up in a function above this function called fetch data, where topic and fetch data is getting called with a topic. For whatever reason, topic isn't being passed to it. So let's go see where that's selected. Topic is questions drop down dot selected. Do we not have a questions drop down anymore, or did I leave that alone? Oh,
Um,
we literally. I'm not asking it a question, Lyzi. I've been filling out the top half of the form and not the
but
bottom
not the
half of the
bottom
form.
half.
So let's say, do people who code as a hobby contribute to open source? And that
Oh my
works.
gosh, it works. We also get the loading animation, which is staying there above the chart, which I actually love, and I think that is a feature, not a bug.
Noted.
It's pretty and mesmerizing.
So this is people who say they code as a hobby. What they had to, how they respond to the question, how often do they contribute to open source? We could also do something where I could say,
Whoa! I just found something cool.
what?
If you click in the visualization, if you click on selected group or all respondents in the top legend, it'll remove that from the chart.
Ooh, I do like that.
It's got the nice little animation there too, and that's really cool.
I like this one. Um, um, do people who code as a hobby, how do they feel about the quality of open source software? Or here, let's do how people who contribute to open source never. How do they feel about the quality of open source software? Would you believe that in general they think that it's slightly lower quality? And if we flip that and we say people who contribute to open source, I want to check the. What are my options for this? We've got. My options are less than once a month or more, but more than once per year. That's the highest. Okay, so let's say once a month or more. Oh, once a month or more often. And see how they feel about the quality of open source. They feel it's really good. Look at that's a statistically significant difference there.
Wow.
Could you believe that people who contribute to open source often think it's good?
No, I wouldn't believe that actually.
Actually, now that you say it,
Yeah, I would have expected people. I mean, maybe I'm just around like salty people all the time, but
totally.
I mean, also true. This is cool. So do we know? Taking a look in the code, can we look at the actual chart generating code?
Yeah.
Because
this is where my expertise falls apart, but Lyzi is my chart.js guru, so
yeah, well, first I have to actually like find the functions in here that are doing
get
anything.
Chart data. So let's see who's calling get chart data.
That's being called by on click ask button.
Okay, and then there's a function called draw chart.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go find function draw chart, which is line 404.
Yep. Cool. What I was curious about specifically what all respondents included. But it sounds like it is actually all respondents.
It's I think they're automatically fetching the like people who have responded, everyone. So it's giving us sort of a baseline. It's anyone who answered this question at all.
Yeah.
How they responded to that question.
I wanted to make sure that we weren't artificially constraining the possible, like that full number by the changes that we made.
Oh, that's actually a good idea. Let me. Oh, but can we? If we hover this, will it just give you a percentage? I was wondering if you could get. Oh, here we go. 85406 total respondents in the. It says in the result row.
Yeah, so and when you change the question, that number of respondents changes because it's the number of respondents who actually answered that question.
But adding more filter parameters shouldn't change that. It should just change the first number.
Right. So let's give that a try.
Yes, and the second number stayed the same.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, it would be, I mean, and we don't really quite have the time to do this, but it would also be cool if anybody watching wants to do it, to have the comparison data be changeable as well. So like if you wanted to not have all respondents, but like all the respondents um, who, have this other, answer this other question this other way, that could be cool. So looking at the chart code, that draw chart function,
Mm-hmm.
um, the chart that is being used here is a horizontal bar chart, and Chart.js
Correct.
has a lot of different options for charts. I think actually horizontal bar chart makes the most sense here. And I mean, if we wanted to, we could totally throw in, something um, silly and see what it does. But Chart.js has different data option parameters for different types of charts. So we would have to probably change a lot of different pieces of it to get a
Yeah.
different.
Say, is there any one in particular that you think would like do well as a quick port?
Let's see. Chartjs.org. Ooh, I love the Chart.js loading. It like kind of loads tilty. It's very cool. Ooh, you can do mixed chart types. You can animate things. Wow, new Chart.js, y'all. Okay. Line charts, multi-axis stepped, bar charts. I don't know. I'm trying to like think of something, but I don't know. There's so many. What is ooh. There is this one called there's a section in here called scriptable for different types of charts. And there's a scriptable bar chart, but I don't know what they mean by scriptable.
Big same. I also don't know what you mean. What they mean.
Well, maybe what we can do here, how about this? Instead of making the hover give you a percentage, what if we made the hover give you the total number?
Yeah, that sounds good. Really quickly, I'm just adding a error condition where if you didn't select a bottom question, it doesn't do anything. It just tells you.
Awesome. This change is actually going to be very easy.
That's okay. I don't mind easy changes.
Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, where are you going to be?
Line 432.
Jump to Lyzi. Oop, are
Can you
you?
hear that?
Yeah, but it says you're in the README.
Well, I'm not.
Cool. Where are you? Line 432? Yeah, for some reason
430.
it thinks you're in the README, though I can see your cursor. That seems like a
How,
bug.
wait, how do you do that?
What?
How do you jump to where a person
If
is?
you click on if you click on your avatar, there's a jump to. For some reason,
Oh,
it thinks you're stuck at README markdown line 1 for some reason.
amazing.
Um, we'll file a bug after this stream.
Yeah,
But I
exactly.
can see your little like blue cursor. I see the error.
Cool. So on line 132, I'm going to go in, and right here it is trying to give you the data once it takes the count, like the total number, and passes it into this function get percentage. But instead, we can just use sample counts, right?
We could just use the direct.
Just, but I don't know. I don't even need to map it, right?
Oh, I guess not. I think it
I
would
mean,
be the two
unless
numbers.
sample count.
I think you're right. I think it's just the two numbers. Let's try it. Let's try it and see what happens.
It's still adding a percentage, so but it is showing the numbers.
It's still adding the percentage, but it's showing the
No,
numbers.
it's still adding a percent symbol at the end.
Oh no. One moment while I address my cat. Hi. If I just turn, he'll leave. He just needs to be acknowledged.
So the
Oh.
comment at line 455 there.
Yeah. Oh, I see. It's taking the actual number, but putting a percent sign on it.
Yes. Which is amazing. So now I just fixed that, so it should work. I'm just picking random questions.
Yeah, me too. I'm I still got a percentage, but I might not have the latest. Let me refresh, make sure I have the latest code. People who never contribute to open source, do they code as a hobby? Actually, kind of interesting question. Most of them say yes, and now I'm getting.
Okay, yeah, so this is fun. So where we're at now is that the scale of the chart is still has been updated to match the values in each of these bars,
I see
but
that.
we have not updated the all respondents.
Oh, I see. Looks like line 439. We need to do the same thing you did with line 432.
Yeah.
So
Do
we need.
that.
So we need to, yeah. And then there might be one more spot, which might be in the scales, and it's down at line 464. I think we can just, strip out the percentage. Boom.
Okay. Now hopefully we should get a reasonable looking chart with actual numbers of people.
I like that idea. Do I code as a hobby? Yes. How often do I, how do you feel about the quality of open source software? Great.
Oh, so interesting. Okay, the one that I did was, do you believe you need to be a manager to make more money? And I said
Ooh.
no. And then the question I asked was, which of the following options best describes you today? And of the people who said that being that you need to be a manager to make more money. Wait, okay, hold on.
We're going to start asking fun questions now.
So let's talk about data for a second.
Let's.
This makes sense, right? Or this doesn't make sense, right?
What's the question?
All respondents is all respondents.
Yes.
So what I'm wondering is, right, like the reason percentages was nice
Oh, because
was
all respondents should
called
always be
normalized.
100. Yeah, I see that. It's normalized. Fudge. Okay.
So this is a thing that happens, y'all. When you work with data is like, have you ever seen that amazing XKCD with the population density map, where it's like, oh, it seems like the concentration of, people who pick their nose is in all of these large cities. I wonder why that is. Well, it's because it wasn't normalized for population. It's just where the most people are. So obviously that's where the most people who pick their nose are, statistically speaking. So
this is. Yeah, because it's like, well, I mean, it's still sort of interesting, right? It's in the selected group, this number said it, but in all respondents, this many said it. So, I mean, but I think percentage does make sense because we're almost comparing the length of the bars more so than the actual numbers.
exactly.
So, it's up to you. You
That
can,
was a,
go
we
ahead.
should rewind.
Let's see if rewind works. Forgive my cat. He is being a menace.
No, he's just excited about charts.
I mean, who isn't?
Right.
Okay, that goes back. You go back a little further. A little further. Cool. And that looks. Those got reset. That got reset. I want to make sure this didn't undo a bit of code that makes things work up top. I'm just looking for other red, blue, other red, green in the file. Aha! It did. That's fine. This wasn't actually working because the sample size string wasn't listed here. So rewind.
Okay.
You may
Have been.
You've been rewound.
Let's see. How do you feel about the quality of open source software?
Do you code as a hobby? How do people who code as a hobby feel about whether they think they need to be a manager to make more money?
So the reason that I wanted to play with this chart is that I don't that no matter what I put in the filter, it seems to almost exactly match the all respondents, which leads me to believe that there's something funky going on.
What do you mean almost match?
Like the percentages are almost exactly the same no matter what I put. Like, so if I said, like, do you code as a hobby? No, for the filter. And then the question is, are you the IT support person for your family, say? Each of the, oh, wait, never mind. No, it's still like the all respondents versus the selected group, the all respondent, they almost look exactly the same.
But I mean, it might be that there's not a tremendous amount of variation there because they're
Right.
almost the same.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have to look through the questions and find one that is like particularly telling.
Yeah, because I mean, we also one of the things that's one of the things that one of the things that is still, even with demographic data being collected for the survey, is still not accounted for is the fact that it's people who took the Stack Overflow survey, right? And they acknowledge that. But you're like that is not going to be all people, and I think people who know the survey exists and respond to it are going to have a lot of factors in common, and they may
Right.
just lead to a certain homogeneity of responses.
Totally.
But you're right. I would love to see one where it's like really different.
Yeah. I mean, so adding multiple filters helps with this because it makes a smaller set of people.
That's true.
Anyway, we have 6 minutes left. What do you want to do in 6 minutes?
That's a good question. I think first of all, I think we're actually in a kind of a cool spot here, right? Like this is working, and you can really, I think we can really dig in on the data and like slice things.
Totally. I'm hoping that there isn't like something we missed about the data that is causing, I don't know. I get worried about drawing incorrect conclusions from data.
Absolutely, and right, like void in Michigan. We are not lawyers. We are.
Yeah.
I'm not a data scientist. I can just I just made some bars be different lengths.
Yeah.
And I totally, yeah, I want to make sure that people, you know, anything you see in this chart is the start of an investigation, not the end of an investigation.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Is that a good disclaimer?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like if you see something in this chart that seems, oh, that's very interesting, that is the start of an adventure where you scrutinize the data. Maybe you do your own research. Like please do not take a chart screenshot from this app that we just built and add it to an article, a blog post that says, "Look at the conclusion we've reached," because
Right.
like this is just like, oh, that's an interesting discrepancy. I wonder what's going on there, and we can dig into it. I don't, the methodology behind this data could be a little bit higgledy piggledy. The methodology that we coded up this filtering interface potentially is very higgledy piggledy.
Right. Yeah.
And then reality is frequently higgledy piggledy. So
It's so true.
those three confounding factors mean that while this is a cool thing, I don't know that it's let's use this as a toy to play with this data more so than
Right. And yeah, that's like a core data visualization principle too, or just like working with data anyway, is like you can only go one way in terms of abstraction. You can't like unabstract anything. So as soon as you aggregate or curate the data, you can't go back the other way.
I like that.
Um,
This is not a conclusion reaching machine.
yes, that is usually a human job.
Yeah, this is not a conclusion reaching machine. It's a It's a data exploration machine. If you've, I'm not sure if you've ever seen Spurious Correlations. Have you ever seen this website?
Mm-mm.
It's an incredible website. Spurious Correlations is a collection of spurious correlations.
What? No.
So it's plots that happen to have a really good like p-value that maybe you shouldn't use one to deduce the other.
Oh man.
So
I'm very
the number of people who
excited.
drown by falling in a pool correlates with films Nicolas Cage appears in. divorce rate in Maine correlates with the per capita consumption of margarine.
Oh wow, this is amazing.
A lot of them are about death, which is I'm trying not to spend too much time on. But total revenue generated by arcades and computer science doctorates awarded in the U.S. There might be something interesting there about the rise of computers and the hardware and stuff like that. But it is interesting to watch it tail off. And worldwide non-commercial space launches correlates very strongly with sociology doctorates awarded. Anyway,
what I learned from that is I should have studied sociology because then I could own my own rocket company.
and if I really step up my mozzarella cheese consumption, I can increase the number of civil engineering doctorates in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, sold. Do it.
I'll do what I can in the mozzarella cheese front. So that PSA aside, I think we're wrapped up for this week. Lyzi, I have your somewhere in here. I think I have your profile, and if I don't, I accidentally closed it.
Oh, fun. Well, I'm Lyzi Diamond pretty much everywhere. So you can find me on glitch.com /@Lyzi Diamond.
Yeah, Lyzi's amazing. And this was super fun. I'm super glad you jumped on the stream with me today because
it was so great.
It made all the difference being able to bounce this stuff back and forth and get to a spot where I actually think we have kind of a nifty thing here. If non-rigorous, nifty if non-rigorous.
Amazing. Yeah. And stay tuned because sometime in July, Potch and I are going to do a very special live stream about our favorite topic, which is to be revealed later. Yes,
this is not the end. You haven't seen the last of Lyzi Diamond. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and have a great week.